Your Hazardous Earth video all about the structure of the Earth. In today's clip, we're going to be having a look at the 4 different layers of the Earth and looking at some of the physical properties within it. Okay, just to start us off then, we're going to have a look at what is the Earth like and what are these Earth's layers. So on the screen, you can see 2 images. So the first image is showing you a picture of a fruit. The second image, you can see a picture of the Earth that has been cut in half. So what we're going to look at in today's video is what is the link between our fruit and the Earth. So the Earth is split up into many different layers, as you can see from this diagram if we cut into it. This is exactly the same as the fruit. So you can see the kind of outside and then the fleshy center of your fruit. So the first thing that I want you to do for me and I want you to think about is what are the different layers of the Earth. So the Earth has 4 separate layers. So I want you to pause this video for me, have a think, and can you name each of those 4 different layers? Okay, so hopefully you've had a think about each of those 4 layers. So the 4 layers are as follows: the inner core, the outer core, the mantle, and the crust. So the inner core is right at the center of the Earth, just like the core of the apple. Just outside our inner core, we have the outer core. Then the next layer, the biggest layer of the Earth, is the mantle. And then finally on the edge, we have the crust. So you should know about each of these different layers, nice and simple. But for your exam, you need to know the different layers' properties. So the properties that they could ask you about in your exam is the temperature, the density, so how compact the particles are within your layer, the composition, which means what the layer is made from, and then finally your physical state. So is it found as a solid, a liquid, or a gas? So I want you to pause this clip now and see if you can remember any characteristics, any of these properties of each of the layers. Try and remember your temperature, what is the density like, the composition, and the physical state. Okay, so let's go through each of these layers together then. So the inner core. The inner core has the hottest temperature. The temperatures of the inner core can reach 6,000 degrees Celsius. So 6,000 degrees Celsius, that is the temperature of the sun. So it's extremely hot. It generates a lot of heat in the inner core. The inner core is made up of iron and nickel, which are 2 of the minerals that make up our inner core. The inner core is also a solid rock. The reason it's a solid rock is because the pressure pulling all of these particles together in the center of the Earth. All of this heat and all of the energy that is in the inner core is created by something called radioactive decay. Okay, so now let's have a look at the outer core. So the outer core is also extremely hot, and this can also reach temperatures up to 6,000 degrees. But it tends to be slightly cooler than the inner core. This, exactly like the inner core, is also made from our minerals iron and nickel, so that's the composition of our outer core. However, the big difference here is that the outer core is a liquid state. So it is moving and fluid. Okay, so now let's move over to this side. So our mantle, the thickest layer of the Earth. This is a liquid of molten rock, which is really thick and gooey. It's constantly moving, and the movement of this we're going to look at later on in the topic is in something called a convection current. The mantle is slightly cooler than the inner core, and the temperatures this reaches is 500 degrees Celsius to 4,000 degrees Celsius. So it's slightly cooler than the inner and outer core. What is this made from? So this is also made from iron, but it is also made from magnesium as well. So slightly different minerals are found here. And then finally we have the crust, the outer layer of the Earth. So our crust is a solid layer, solid rock. So it's made from different types of rock. And this is our coolest layer of the Earth. And the highest temperature that our crust reaches is up to 400 degrees Celsius. So there are your different characteristics, your different properties of the Earth's layers. So if you learn all of these facts, all of this information, you'll be able to answer any exam question about your Earth's layers. So we're going to have a quick look at some exam questions and some ways that this can be tested. So on the screen, I've got an example exam question all about your Earth's properties. So I want you to pause this for me, have a go at these exam questions, use the figure on the left-hand side of the screen to see if you can answer them. Okay, so let's go through the answers to this together. So the answers for this question, we've got the first one, identify which one of the following describes the outer core. So the outer core is a liquid layer of 2,200 kilometers thickness. So we can see this because the outer core is labeled on your diagram. You can see that it is a liquid and the distances have been put on your diagram. So you'd need to do 5,100 kilometers minus 2,900 kilometers, which will give you a value of 2,200, which is correct for the first one. The reason we know the other answers are incorrect is because B says it is a solid layer, which is incorrect for our outer core. C says that it is partially solid. And then finally, D says that it is also a solid layer. So we know that these answers cannot be correct. And then the second question says, state which one of the following of the Earth's layers has the highest density. So we know the answer for this one is going to be the inner core. The reason we know that it is the inner core is because the inner core is a solid layer, which means that it is going to have a high density. Also, remember we spoke about all of the particles in the inner core being dragged together and pulled together at the center of the Earth. So we know that this would be our highest density layer. So have a look at those exam questions, check through your answer and make sure you are happy with the different layers of the Earth and each of their properties.